Hello and welcome to another To It For Media feature interview. I am your host, Jhaka Wooding, and today I am joined by Mrs Globe, British Virgin Islands, Mrs Rhonda Victor Pinnock. We are going to discuss her recent participation in China, where she represented the territory and came home with a title. More after this break.
At Higher BVI, we're not just about business. We're about empowering lives, and that is because we aspire to inspire. By choosing us, you're supporting a company that believes in equal opportunities, diversity, and community growth. Our mission goes beyond profit. It's about providing HR solutions, fostering talent, and leaving a positive impact. Join us in building a better future, a better BVI. Choose Higher BVI, where your support isn't just a transaction, it's a transformation. Together, we're changing lives in these beautiful Virgin Islands.
Welcome back and thank you so much for sticking with us. And of course, Mrs. Globe BVI, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us today.
Thank you very much, and lovely good morning, Jhaka, and a beautiful good morning to you out there in Media Land. I am Mrs. Rhonda Victor Pinnock, your Mrs. British Virgin Islands Globe 2024. It has been an awesome experience representing the women of the Virgin Islands all the way in Henan, China. The pageant, as you may have known, took place on March the 1st to 11th. It was at the Flower Hotel in China, and it was quite a beautiful arrangement.
All right, awesome. Now, you just mentioned your overall experience. That's where I actually wanted to start off. Let's start from your coronation even. What was it like knowing that you're going to represent the BVI on the international stage and really be that ambassador for your country all the way on the other side of the world?
Yeah, so this is my very first rodeo in pageant, and just to be chosen as Mrs. British Virgin Islands was quite an honor. When I was first approached and asked to represent the Virgin Islands in such a caliber, I paused for a second and said, me? Why me? What it is about me that I have to bring to the world stage? Then realizing that I have so much to offer, so much to give because of my experiences, I said, why not? So I've decided to take up the mantle and carry the Virgin Islands to the beautiful world stage.
All right. Now, what was it like interacting with the women from all the different countries? When I think of international pageants, I think of diversity, I think of a mix of cultures. What was your experience?
Yes, and that happened to be the highlight of my pageant. The ladies were from 54 different countries from around the globe, and they were intrigued by the simple, I call it simple, by the color of my skin. Many of them touching, oh, this is what it feels like. The color of my skin, this is what it looks like. They were very cuddly and close and touchy, as I said, and kissy. Mm-hmm. And knowing that they loved me for who I am as a woman of African descent. Some of the tourists for the first time, is like the first time they've seen a woman of such a color. Many times they would tap each other and say, hi, look at her, look at her. And I would simply wave and say hi. The ladies also were intrigued by my hair. They're like, oh, this is how your hair looks. Can I touch it? So it was quite an honor being myself and even experiencing and collaborating and working with different women of various backgrounds from 54 different countries. The women were all educated. They were all of different backgrounds, and they came together in unity and supported each other and learned from each other. So I would have never met women all the way from Afghanistan, from the different countries represented, and to come together as a melting pot and even create long-lasting friendships and a sisterhood. So that was a real highlight for me.
Awesome. Now, what would you say were the most memorable experiences you had? Because we got to follow your journey on the Mrs. British Virgin Islands Facebook page. We got the photos and everything, but that is nothing compared to being there in person.
The most memorable moment was sitting in the presence of Dr. Tracy Kemble. Now, she is the president of the Mrs. Globe pageant and also the president of the WIN Foundation. WIN stands for Women in Need. So the pageant is not just an ordinary pageant, but it is a fundraiser for the WIN Foundation, which gives back to women, which empowers women, which reminds women to be their authentic self, to be reflective, to be impactful. And Women in Need bring women from all over the world to fight a cause. And my cause in this caliber is that of domestic violence. That is a platform that I highlighted on my journey. And throughout my reign as Mrs. British Virgin Islands, I intend of being impactful, intentionally impactful with my platform of domestic violence. So just being in the presence of such women who come together to fight a cause, women who are passionate, women who are resilient, that was quite an honor.
Now, let's zone into your platform a bit. Why is the issue of domestic violence so important to you?
Yes. So it only makes sense, I would say, to speak of something that you have experienced. Now, I have spoken several times about my platform and I've shared my story on domestic violence. And when you have such an experience, I think it is important not for us to become just overcomers, but to be aspirational in overcoming, where we try to make a difference. We go out there, we share our stories, and we encourage other women to be overcomers and to let them know that they themselves are winners.
And you did mention that throughout your reign, you're intending to continue at your advocacy in the BVI. Have you set a plan for that as yet? In what ways do you intend to do that?
Absolutely. I have a year's calendar where I will be doing a series of events to highlight the issue of domestic violence and help to curb the effects that it has on women in society. Now, I want to add to this, domestic violence is no respecter of person. Doesn't matter what your name is, what your position is in the company that you work for, if you're rich or you're poor, your economic status, your social status, political status, it is no respecter of persons. So some women or some persons tend to cover it up because of our title. And I was once part of that cover-up until I was able to not overcome, but to be impactful and aspirational because of my experience with domestic violence. So yes, there is a year's calendar with several plans that I have for each month of the year, and I intend on curbing and bringing this monster out of the closet. It has been hiding for too long. It has been swept under the rug for too long, and it is time that we come together as women. We encourage each other as women. We take our sisters' hand. We carry them along the path to freedom, because unfortunately, some persons cannot do it alone. And that is where we as women have to come together. We need to come together and win.
I love that. I love how you continue to carry not only your platform, but the organization as well in all your spoken presence. All right, now let's speak a bit about community support, because that's something I believe we saw in heaves during your representation of the BVI. Any story that we put out regarding you was immediately shared. Everybody sent in their congratulations and their support along your journey. So how did it feel knowing that you had the entire Virgin Islands behind you?
It was an amazing feeling. And I do want to say, Virgin Islands, I appreciate your support from the heart. Just to be an ambassador, that alone is heavy. And I take that title very seriously because out of many women, I was chosen for such a platform, for such a representation, for such an empowering world stage to represent women who are married. Of course, Mrs. British Virgin Islands, it is for women. You can for women either married, widowed, or divorced. So it's not just for married women, women who have all their things together. No, it supports women of different caliber. So there are 3 different platforms that Mrs. British Virgin Islands hold. That is Mrs. British Virgin Islands Globe. That is who I am. There's Mrs. British Virgin Islands Classic. That's for the older ladies. And then there's Mrs. British Virgin Islands Curvy. So that is for women of a bigger size. So we embrace women and we ensure that women are represented and there's a diversity of women. And again, we set out to empower, enrich, and motivate women.
Awesome. Now, from this experience, one, is pageantry something you would continue to consider participating in? And is it something you would encourage other women to consider participating in?
Well, it was my first rodeo in pageantry. It is something that I never saw myself doing. To do another pageant, definitely, definitely I would. I had a great support team. Let me mention them quickly. I have Mrs. Alicia Green, who is the founder and director of the WIN British Virgin Islands organization, and also the director of Mrs. Globe pageant. I had the wonderful and lovely Miss Gilda Richardson. Now, she was my etiquette coach. The phenomenal walk that you guys saw in China, I honor that, or I dedicate that walk to Mrs. Gilda Richardson, my lovely makeup artist. I had a couple sessions with Body Glam, who's one of my sponsors, and also the lovely Akima Crab. She taught me she taught me the skills needed to look all beautiful. And I also had a wonderful makeup artist from Trinidad who also assisted me while they're in lovely China to look all glamorous and beautiful. Again, I could not have done it without your support, BVI. I thank you again. And it was indeed an honor to step out there in the beautiful world stage and bring the Virgin Islands to the globe. And that is what I did. Yes.
All right. Now, tell me a bit about the award ceremony, because I did notice you were nominated in several areas and you did make it home to the BVI with an award to your name. So tell me a bit about that.
Well, while in China, I got 4 nominations. Those nominations were Best Mama Body. I also was nominated for Motivator of the Year, along with Country Pride, which is to me one of my most precious nominations, and also nominated Difference Maker. So Difference Maker is a prize that I walked away with. Again, so my nominations are one that resonates with the person that I am. And I was quite happy to see and to know that these persons in China saw these awesome qualities that I possess. So sometimes you think it's only you alone walking around and nobody is seeing and nobody is noticing. But to be honored and to be highlighted for such nominations, they speak volumes as to the woman I am. Yes. And let me speak to each nomination just for a bit. So concerning Best Mama Body, I enjoy going to the gym. It is one of my favorite things to do. I am a CrossFitter, so I go to CrossFit, yes. Mm-hmm. And also the way I eat, my diet, I am of alkaline lifestyle. I don't call it a diet because to me, a diet stops at a certain point, but for me, it is a lifestyle. So I'm very specific and particular as to what I put in this temple of mine. Motivator of the Year. I think they saw that through my speech when I was able to highlight the importance of curbing the negative effects that domestic violence has on women. So I was very passionate and my speech was intentional to let women know, hey, this is something we can overcome and we can win. I also thought they saw this because I was an educator for the past 15 years. And that is something that I do. I motivate my students. They know that they can do it. And not only in my past, profession, whatever I do, I motivate persons to be their best in whatever they are doing. And that is something I find joy in, to see the smiles on person's face and say, hey, it is because of you I was able to do it. So I pull out that best part in you, even though you may not find it within. You have it within. But just for somebody to come along and take it out of you, and that is what I do best. So I enjoy seeing that. Concerning country pride, now I'm going to say this. It is no secret that I was not born here in the Virgin Islands, but country pride is something that is taught. It is not something, unfortunately, you are born with. And when the news first came out of who Mrs. British Virgin Islands is, there were many comments. She's not from here. Look at her face structure. Who is she? Where is she from? She doesn't look like one of us. And to go all the way to China and sell the Virgin Islands to everybody I met. And as a result, there is a group of women from around the world who will be coming here to the Virgin Islands to celebrate our 70th Emancipation Festival with us. So being nominated Country Pride, it is something I take to heart. To me, it is one of my most precious nominations, because if they saw that Mrs. British Virgin Islands really love her country, she's really telling everybody, oh, you must come to the most beautiful part of the world. And to me, it really is. So that is one of my most precious nominations. Country pride is not something that you are born with. It is something that is taught. So we as Virgin Islanders, we have to ensure that we teach our children the importance of pride by the way that we act, by the things that we say, by the actions that we demonstrate in front of them. We must do it with great pride, and therefore country pride would reign in our Virgin Islands. So I want to say also that at this point, we are right now searching for the next Mrs. British Virgin Islands. So if you're interested, ladies, please sign up at www.mrsbritishvirginislands.com. So if you're interested in being an ambassador for the Virgin Islands, go right ahead and do that. Now I want to talk about my last nominations, which I was given the award for, was that of difference maker. Now, that is my life. Being a difference maker. That is who I am. That is a person that lies deep within me and comes out every time I open my mouth. With every action that I do, it is intentional. Being a difference maker is intentional. There were several ways in which I thought that they saw this. There were many times we had to learn a special choreography. And I will go to the different ladies when we had time in between just to make sure that they're getting it. In my professional life, in my personal life, everything I do is being that of a difference maker. So again, those 4 nominations, they are exactly who your Mrs. British Virgin Islands Globe is. If you want to know who I am, go ahead, Google those words. And that is the definition of Mrs. British Virgin Islands Globe.
Awesome. Now, I just want to say again, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today. And of course, sharing inspiring words, not only of our team, but of course, of all of our viewers, because there's a lot to take out of the way you present yourself, the way you speak about the territory, and of course, the awesome way that you represented the territory over in China. We're looking forward to seeing what you do next. So I hope we get some invitations to everything along that calendar. Any final words before we close?
Yes, I would like to thank my sponsors, House of Luxury, Royal Shop, BVI Tourist Board, BVI Finance, Nova Vita, Umi, Beautiful by Jasmine, Castaway Gym, Body Glam, Caribbean Department Store.
Awesome. Now, Like I said, thank you so much for being here with us today. And of course, viewers, thank you so much for joining us for this featured interview. Of course, stay tuned for more about Mrs. British Virgin Islands' journey. And we will be bringing all that to you as soon as it becomes available. I'm Jhaka Wooding, and stay tuned to 284 Media for more great content.